Welcome to The Screen Queen, the show where I'll be talking about your favorite TV show or your favorite movie. You'll just have to listen to find out. This is your host, Samantha Parrish. Hello there, and welcome back to the show. 'Tis the season for some screenings, and I put the screen in the Screen Queen. I am your host, Samantha Parrish. So I have to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of The Nightmare Before Christmas. Now, I do like my fair share of Tim Burton stuff. I love Corpse Bride. I watch that habitually every Halloween, and I didn't have to have a reason to watch that movie. And I loved Edward Scissorhands. I loved Beetlejuice. I loved Batman. But ever since I watched this as a kid, that Nightmare Before Christmas didn't really grow with me as time went on. I still feel the same way I did when I first watched it when I was, 8 years old. And I remember when I first saw the poster, I was at the mall with my mom, and every Friday night she was collecting some stuff for her small business on eBay. And every Friday I would be staring at this poster, and it would freak me out. And I didn't really understand, why there was someone on this very strange looking cliff, and using my contest clues it says The Nightmare Before Christmas, so I'm like, I like Christmas. Why is there gotta be a nightmare there? It really freaked me out as a kid. It just got to me. And then as time went on, finally my aunt was visiting my grandparents, and she had The Nightmare Before Christmas, and I'm like, okay, yeah, let's watch it, let's do it. And as I'm playing with my cousins, and we're kind of watching the movie, and I'm paying attention at some points, I'm just like, okay, this is a thing? It's so strange to look back and, remember that I didn't feel like how I thought I was gonna feel about a film. I wasn't expecting to be scared because that was, taken away from the whole stigma I had towards it, but I also didn't feel like I was in love with it. And it's funny to me because I love animation. Many people on the show know that I will eat, sleep, and drink animation. But this just never got to me. And over the years, I've seen it so much that I kind of have a bit of a strange relationship with it. Well, that's just one hell of a way to get in the Christmas series on the Screen Queen, starting with Tim Burton's A Nightmare Before Christmas. So before I go any further into my stories about Nightmare Before Christmas, I do want to go ahead and talk about what it is, because many people know on the show, I don't believe in keeping people in the dark, that if they weren't aligned with that time era where this movie was at, it's not their fault that they didn't catch something in their era, it's all good. So here's the synopsis. Jack Skellington is the king of Halloween. He is the pumpkin king. His reign can never end, but damn, he just doesn't feel satisfied with life. It's the same thing every Halloween. You scare people. What else is there to life? So, he ends up venturing out of his holiday realm, and he sees the other various holiday realms like St. Patrick's Day, Valentine's Day, Thanksgiving. God, I never want to know what's in those doors. And then he sees a Christmas tree. And he's like, I wonder what that could be. So he ends up going into the dimension, literally falling in and pulling an Alice in Wonderland. And then he is amazed by what he sees. It's the total opposite of what he knows in his realm. He sees these sparkling trees and these wonderful toys, and he wants to utilize that in his realm, and he just becomes just makes a complete career change. And he decided that he wants to take over Christmas. And, that's, it's not gonna go quite well. I mean, it's called The Nightmare Before Christmas, so, probably not gonna end very well for Christmas, but what's gonna happen to Jack in the end? Now, here's the funny thing about The Nightmare Before Christmas. It's weird to say it's Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, because Tim Burton didn't stay with the production very long. His name is on the thing, but there has been cast and crew members that have said that he'll stop by for a little bit of time and just go, okay. and then go back to Batman Returns, which was the film that he put out before Nightmare Before Christmas. So, as much as it does look strange that the person who is attached to the project put their name on the project, it isn't there for the project. But with the fact that he was putting out back-to-back films from doing Beetlejuice, and then Batman, and then he turned around and he did, Edward Scissorhands, and he turned around and then he did, God, I know he probably did something in 91, but I can't think of it. And then he had Batman Returns, and then Nightmare Before Christmas. Tim Burton was a busy boy. However, if you're gonna go with a project, you stay with the project, because there were people that had to make executive decisions without him. And they'd be sitting there like, where's Tim? Where's Tim? Where's Tim? And it just drove them nuts. But there was even a joke made about the non-presence of Tim Burton, with the fact that Danny Elfman, is really the guy that should have his name up there, because he did a majority of the work. A lot of this movie works because of the music. Don't quote me on it, but it is one of the huge factors that really amps up The Nightmare Before Christmas. And on top of writing the music, Danny Elfman was also the singing voice for Jack. And now, looking at the film more, Jack sings more than he talks. A lot of the songs that comes through, like Jack's Lament, and then there was the, God, I can't think of the song name, but it's the, what's this, what's this, what's this, what's this, what's this, that song, and there was some other several ones that came through. So, Danny Elfman was a busy boy. He really poured everything into this project to put it together. But you don't see him saying, hey, I did a majority of the work. He's just like, hey, tell me what to do and I'm going to have fun making things. That's Danny Elfman's attitude. And I do like a majority of the stuff that Danny Elfman does. I mentioned him before on Back to School, where he did the song Dead Man's Party when he was originally in his Oingo Boingo days. But, looking at the night and day between, Back to School and then seeing what he did and really understanding what he did for Nightmare Before Christmas, it does make me appreciate the film a little bit more, for the way that it exists. I might not like it, but I know that it exists for some certain people and it works for some certain people, and Danny Elfman definitely touched the hearts of those certain people out there. And again, I have to say that because he's the one that poured a majority of work into this. I know it's an animated film, but then again, he did really put a lot to make the animation come to life even more. So, it's a bit of a toss-up. At the end of the day, it's still going to be Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. It's still his idea, it's still his drawings, and people just brought everything to life. It's just that sticky situation of being too busy to be present. But I'm sure that's probably fixed since then. I don't know Tim Burton personally, but I haven't heard any other issues that came through of him not being present for his films after that. But with all of the hype that's been surrounding The Nightmare Before Christmas, there's something that I never really noticed, and it might just be me with the way that other film critiquers have pointed this out, is the pacing of The Nightmare Before Christmas is a little bit odd, and the presentation of some unanswered plot points. And sometimes you don't have to answer every question. I learned that when I began writing my stories, that it's okay if you don't have an answer, just make sure that your world makes sense. And there's one part in the film where the character Sally is, she picks up some kind of stick and it begins to take the form of a Christmas tree and spins, and it's beautiful. Then all of a sudden the tree just bursts into flames and people are like, so she's psychic? When I watched that as a kid, I don't think that ever really came to my mind that she was a psychic. It was just, oh, she made a pretty Christmas tree, and then it, bursts into flames, and oh no, this is foreboding. So, looking at it, it does really give the inside detail of this isn't going to end well, and someone has to tell Jack it's not going to end well, but they never really explained that. If she just went, Jack, I had a vision, then it would, kind of validate, but she just goes, Jack, there's something wrong, can you explain the tree's psychic thing real quick, and then we'll get moving and grooving with the film? But I think people don't have an issue with it because it's so overhyped so much that everyone's like, oh, whatever, it's a plot point. It's still a beautiful film. It is, but it's definitely going to irk some people that want to see a story that has all the questions answered, or feel that they can see a question and make the answer for themselves in the world that they're getting immersed into. But that's always been kind of a strange thing. Not a bad thing, but just a strange thing. But with that plot point to talk about, it does bring up my next point to talk about this movie. And God, this is going to feel so weird having to say this, but the villain's placement is a little bit odd. I'm not saying it because I don't feel as strong as this film as others do, but looking at it indifferently, like taking aside all my feelings from it and just looking at it as the film that is projected in front of me, I can't argue with the logic that Oogie Boogie wasn't sprinkled enough in the beginning, so it just kind of like comes out of nowhere. From what I remember in the movie, Oogie Boogie was sprinkled into the film. You got to see his whole plot with having Santa Claus kidnapped and brought over to his lair, and that kind of makes everything for that conflict near the end where Jack and Oogie Boogie have their fight. I don't know if it's much of one, but it's conflict. And I just kept thinking, gosh, like there's a song with Oogie Boogie, but other than that, there's not much of a presence there. I mean, I remember that not many of the characters talked about him to make him feel like an ominous force, that with most villains you hear them sprinkled in there to kind of make this foreboding of, oh, this is going to be dreadful when you meet this character. And Jack himself doesn't talk about Oogie Boogie as much. I was kind of surprised, like, near the end when, like, he came through and he goes, "Hello, Oogie." And, like, I'm like, I want to feel more for this. I love a hero and villain confrontation. It's just like, not even steak sizzling on a grill can be able to provide more heat with the way that the battle's about to come through. But I felt like it was a little bit weird. Felt a little bit strained. But then again, I mentioned the production stuff earlier, that Tim Burton wasn't there for a majority of his own film, so everyone's like, well, I just gotta do the best we can. So I can kind of see it as like a valid way as to the way others have interpreted the last third of the film as just strange. Like, not bad, but just strange. I feel like if this film was given the remake treatment, which I am not surprised if that ever happens, I would like to see more of a presence for Oogie Boogie. Like, I want to be scared of him. I never felt scared of him. I wish that there was more to him than just him kidnapping Santa Claus. I can't believe I said it like that, just the way the kids said it in the film. See how much this film rubs off on people? Like, even if you don't like it, you're still gonna say some of the terms. Anyway, I mean, his presence is creepy for a kid's film, but I just wish there was more. And maybe it's because I have, like, a big thing for my villains, that they need to make sense, and they need to, like, have this level of gravitas, and none of them are gonna be like Hans Gruber or Judge Frollo, but who knows, maybe that'll change in the future. Well, it's about that time for the show where I gotta talk about the cast. I've already sprinkled in some of the people that worked on this film, but as much as I love the animation and the way that it works in this film, the cast really does bring everything to life. I can't argue that everyone is perfect for their roles. I already mentioned earlier that Danny Elfman is the singing voice of Jack Skellington, as well as just, well, a majority of the stuff in this film. And Chris Sarandon was the regular speaking voice for Jack, and he's someone that he hasn't really done anything that, like, you would know about, nothing that I would know about. I mean, honestly, when you go on his IMDb page, the only thing that says that he is known for is Nightmare Before Christmas. Like, everyone's gonna have that one thing they're known for, and sometimes they only have one thing that they're known for, but it is nice that this is the one thing that he's known for. I can't argue with that. When I read that Catherine O'Hara was the voice of Sally, it doesn't matter how many years it's been since I found this out, it still shocks me. Like, I shouldn't be surprised, but I would have never known that that was her, with the way that Catherine O'Hara can just change everything into that one character. if you look at her in Home Alone and you hear her just go, there are 15 people in this house and you're the one making trouble, to, Jack, there's something wrong. Like, would have never known the amount of emotion that she brings to a character. But I do find it incredibly hilarious, though, that the first half of the 90s is her in Christmas films. And I don't think anyone's ever put that together, that's, like, what we know her from are these Christmas films in the 90s. And, of course, beyond that, she's done so many things between Beetlejuice, again, that was her first collaboration with Tim Burton before she got into A Nightmare Before Christmas. And then down the line, there was other films that she put into, and famously, I can't not mention it, being Moira Rose from Schitt's Creek. Like, the woman can do no wrong. I have never found a film where I didn't like her in the movie. She is just that great. But above everything in this film, despite the way I feel towards it, she makes the movie for me. Sally has always made the movie for me, and knowing that was Catherine O'Hara really makes me appreciate the movie a whole lot more. But I'd have to say, for the rest of the cast, looking at the ties and connections to the other films that Tim Burton has done, you can kind of just call this like a collaboration movie, with the way that there are people that already worked on Tim Burton's films before. So it's kind of cool to see people that you already knew from his films working together, like building the ensemble. Like, the next one we'll be talking about is Paul Reubens, who voiced the character Locke. And, I mean, do I even have to explain who he is? Do I even have to say that it's Pee Wee Herman? But that's how Tim Burton got his start, was working on Pee Wee's Playhouse. And then they're like, okay, so what do you got? And he's like, I got an idea about a guy whose name you can't say 3 times. And eventually Paul Reubens came on for a smaller role where he played the father of Oswald Cobblepot in Batman Returns. So looking at it's kind of funny, because again, like my first point, there are people going in and out of this film, Tim Burton being one of them, but Paul Reubens kind of also had more time working on Nightmare Before Christmas than Tim Burton did, because he only had the one cameo role, and that opened up Paul Reubens to come in and voice the character Locke. But it is really cool to see that Tim Burton got his start with Pee Wee Herman and still got to use Paul Reubens for a majority of his films. I mean, there's a lot of things about Paul Reubens that I'm not going to get into. It's a whole history with him. But looking at this, and after his passing, I do got to give him the credit that he always knew how to just bring this amazing presence no matter what it was. But this next one is one that's not recognized all the time, and it makes me a little bit sad. Especially since this person I'll be talking about is one of my favorite comedians. Greg Proops had a majority of characters that he voiced. And if you don't know who Greg Proops is, he is known for Whose Line Is It Anyway? He's been majorly affiliated with a majority of stuff on Drew Carey's shows. So you can imagine my surprise when I found out that he was in this film. He does a majority of the characters. He did Harlequin Demon, Devil, and the Sax Player. So he's one of the kids that went to go kidnap Santa Claus. Knowing that it's him, and I'm like, I can't hear his voice, but knowing that he always does like a creepy gremlin voice, I'm like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. That definitely does sound like something Greg Proops was due after seeing him on Whose Line Is It Anyway? He's got one of them like range of voices that can go to a point that you can't identify that it's him. But the next one on this list, I'm still shocked, and I'm still a little disappointed in myself that I still get bamboozled to find out that Glenn Shaddix is the voice of the mayor. I've seen this film enough times to know the personality of the mayor, and when I found out that it was Glenn Shaddix, I'm like, really? I had to go through my memory of the film to think how did I not catch his voice, because Glenn Shaddix does have a pretty iconic voice. A while ago when I was rewatching Teen Titans and he popped on for the last season, I'm like, that's Glenn Shaddix in a robot voice, but that is Glenn Shaddix. Watching him in this, I don't hear Glenn Shaddix. I think it's because he screams so much in the film, and the majority of the stuff that I've seen him in, he doesn't really scream, so it kind of throws me off my game a little bit. But still, pretty cool that he got to reunite with Tim Burton after they worked together on Beetlejuice. And last on this list that I'm going to be covering, I feel like I have to do this. Ken Page as Oogie Boogie, it is pretty spectacular. I'll admit I'm not, too knowledgeable of his stuff, but I know enough of the other animated films he was in to go, oh shit, that was him? That's cool. He was King Gator in All Dogs Go to Heaven. I'm not surprised about that. He also popped in for Dreamgirls as he played Max Washington, so he's had a good mishmash of different stuff, but still, after he did Oogie Boogie, if you go on IMDb, a majority of the stuff that he collaborated with is him reprising the role. So as much as I feel like his character needed a little bit more airtime, people did not forget him, and he still has to come back. And what a good sport that he's come back to still play the character. That's dedication. That's in it for the love of the game, not the fame. So before I finish up talking about The Nightmare Before Christmas, there is a kind of a sweet thing that I found in the recent years. One of my favorite Christmas classics that I'm not sure is going to make it this list this year, depending on my my lotto system, but How the Grinch Stole Christmas always has a special place in my heart, and there is a 1994 TNT special that was in the DVD featurette, and it went into the whole making of the Grinch and how it went in its legacy. And when this came out in 94, it was fresh off of Nightmare Before Christmas. And it made it perfect that the two people they had on the special was Tim Burton and Danny Elfman. And they both talked about how much the Grinch inspired them. And knowing the fact that these two, when they were younger, watching How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and then as they grew up, having a very interesting taste of artistry, with Danny Elfman being in music and Tim Burton being, Tim Burton and everything he does for writing and directing. But then as the two of them came together and got to utilize that love they had for the Grinch growing up, and they talk into detail about it in the special where Danny Elfman said, I listened to that song and I thought, he made that just for me. And I'm like, gonna get my tissues. So just, you seeing the gleam in his eye, because he loved working on Nightmare Before Christmas. He went to say that it was the easiest job he ever had, and you can clearly see that he had a good time working on it just from that special alone. And then seeing Tim Burton's case on it too, where he talked about the movement of the Grinch and the character of the Grinch, it emanated with him so much. And I'm like, looking at it, I can kind of see a little bit of Grinch inspiration into a majority of the stuff that Tim Burton put together, and I can kind of squint my eyes to see that Grinch possibly had an influence on Nightmare Before Christmas. I mean, it's kind of impossible. When you love something so much it inspires you, a part of that does kind of go with you. There are a majority of stuff that I watched and read, and that carried in with me as I worked on Inglorious Inc. It just kind of makes this giant echo, a very creative echo. If you're able to find it on YouTube, or if you can find a special edition DVD of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, it is so worth the watch to see how everyone was inspired by the Grinch. But I do love the fact that there is a little bit more talked about with Nightmare Before Christmas, because again, like I mentioned 1,000 times in this, it's not my favorite film. It's not something that I chase to watch every year, but I do respect it, and I do respect the people that worked on it, and seeing the two people talking about it in the Grinch 94 special, it is pretty heartwarming. It is pretty cool to see how much they love this film, and I can clearly see it in that special, and I can still see it now. I mean, shit, everywhere you go, you can't not run into The Nightmare Before Christmas. It's in Hot Topic, it's in TJ Maxx, it's everywhere in the mall, it's online, it's on Etsy, it's everywhere, it's cosplayed, it's become such a massive thing. It still gets to me every time I go someplace, and I'm like, I really wish I liked this movie, because I would love to buy these things, but damn it just wasn't in the cards for me. But I'm glad that it works for someone else, and people keep loving it so much that people keep going back to the film, and people keep making things from the film, and thus some people even make things for the film. It's a unique little circle of creativity that goes around with this film. I can't argue with the fact that this thing worked for some people, and it's still working for people, and it's still going to go on for years. But I can definitely say we're not going to be thinking about a sequel anytime soon, because Tim Burton is extremely protective of this film, despite not being present for it too much. He did say that he didn't really want things to kind of keep going with Jack, that it just needed to begin the way it ended, with having Jack in Halloween Town, him staying in Halloween Town, and just knowing that he's never going to touch any other holiday ever again, that he learned his lesson in a way that's like a blessing that we have from this film, to just still have it exist the way it is in one story. And, it's a story worth going for every year. Might not work for me, but I know it works for those out there that like a little bit of some scary stuff during Christmas. And that is a wrap on The Nightmare Before Christmas. This was interesting to get into the Christmas series with this film, but also, I don't get too many episodes on this show where I cover a film that is not one that I'm crazy about, but I respect it enough to talk about it, to know that there are some good things about it, and I can't argue with the good things about it, and I really hope people enjoyed the episode. So, before I get into my whole final musings like I usually do, I wanted to give a quick announcement to showcase a local artist in my area. So, I've talked about the open mic night scene that I go to on this show, and one of the artists that I've gotten to know is an amazing artist named Cal. And Cal recently just put out a song called Watch the Moon, and it is so good. I love the comforting vibe that I get from Cal's songs, of the ones that they've performed at open mic night. And if you would like to check out Watch the Moon, it is available on Spotify. And if you would like to see more from that artist, you can check them out at mir_a_cal, Mira Cal. And that concludes the Creator Spotlight. Thank you so much, Cal. Stay amazing. And here's the final musings. And now is the time to find out what the next episode is going to be for the Christmas series on the Screen Queen. So here we go. Let me just mix this up really good. Put some new ones in here last week, so I wonder what I'm going to get. Okay, come on. Get out of the pile. Get out of the pile. Thank you. Well, ask and you shall receive. So, the next episode on the Screen Queen is going to be the Grinch series. Yep, we're going to get into that whole history of the Grinch, man. I talked about it, look what happened. That's rare for me. You speak it into existence, but you never know what's going to get spoken into existence. But, well, I'm not going to argue with what that episode's going to be like. I'm looking forward to it. So, you all take care now. I hope all of you are having a wonderful holiday season. And if the holidays are a little rough on you, my heart goes out to you. The holidays are not really one for everybody. Sometimes it's like with Jack, and you just want to get into the holidays and know, okay, well, I like it in a certain way, and sometimes we like the Grinch, and we just like to be in our bubble during the holidays. But nonetheless, I hope you guys have a good holiday, and take care and stay amazing. And if you want to catch up with me in between uploads, you can find me on my Instagram at the Queen of the Screen, where we can talk about Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. Maybe you can show me something else you like about the film. If you want to catch up with me on my TikTok, where I post up montages and movie stuff, you can find me at The Mystical Space Witch. And if you're interested in the book series that I wrote, you can find it in the description box. Alrighty, you all take care now. Take care of yourself. Don't go crossing holidays together, because we see what happened here. This is your Screen Queen, signing off. Bye-bye!